In the 1990s, women began disappearing in the eastern part of Vancouver, Canada. If you follow me on Instagram or Telegram, you've definitely heard the name Robert Pickton, and you already know how horrifying and disturbing this story is. So let me warn you right away, this story is not for the faint of heart. Welcome back to the channel. If you enjoy scary, strange, or mysterious stories, then you're in the right place. Every week, at least 2 full videos will be released for your attention. Short clips are also regularly shared on Instagram and Telegram. So if you're into these kinds of stories, I would really appreciate it if you followed me on all my social media platforms. It would be a big help. Now, let's begin the story. East Vancouver is considered one of the worst areas in Canada. It's seen as the lowest class area in the entire country. No other crime-ridden place compares to this one. It's full of cheap hotels, pawn shops, garbage piles, used needles, dirty streets, and scary alleys. The police and locals call this place low track, which in Portuguese means low-level life. Between 5,000 and 10,000 people live there. Most of them are drug addicts, primarily using heroin. The area is overrun with drug cartels, biker gangs, and criminals. Prostitution happens openly on the streets, day and night. This area also has one of the highest drug trafficking rates in North America. 1997, night. A man was sleeping at home. Someone knocked loudly at his door. A woman outside was screaming for help. He was confused. Who could it be at this hour? Cautiously, he opened the door. In front of him stood a woman with a knife wound in her abdomen. She was conscious, but had lost a lot of blood. Strangely, one of her hands was cuffed. He immediately called an ambulance and brought her inside. The woman's name was Sterda Endling. She was one of the sex workers from the low track area. She was taken to the hospital. Medical staff asked her what had happened. She said she had been at a party at a place called the Pig Palace. There, a man had tried to assault her, handcuffed her, and stabbed her in the stomach. She managed to survive by grabbing the knife from him and injuring him in the face, then escaped, since only one hand was cuffed. She ran to a neighbor's house and was taken to the hospital, but the police were skeptical because she was a sex worker and a drug addict. Who would believe her? But that same night, a man came to the hospital. He had a deep cut on his face. It was Robert Pickton. A medical examination confirmed the wound matched the woman's story. And in his pocket, they found a key that matched her handcuff. So her story made logical sense. The police detained Robert and questioned him. He claimed the woman had tried to rob him. He said she attacked him with a knife, and he only defended himself. And the police believed him. They didn't believe the woman, because who would trust a prostitute and an addict? Robert Pickton was released without charges. Let me briefly tell you about Robert. He was born in 1949. He lived in a small town 30 km from Vancouver. His family owned a pig farm. Robert was a third-generation pig farmer. He lived with his brother Dave, sister Linda, and their parents. After their parents died in the 1970s, the 3 siblings inherited the farm. Linda moved away. Robert and Dave stayed. Robert was known as a quiet man, but neighbors said the farm was strange. The brothers failed at farming. The place became run down. The pigs were left to wander. They didn't care for them. Robert and Dave were in terrible shape themselves. Their clothes were dirty. They stank of mud and feces. Their house was filthy, messy, and completely neglected. The pig farm was huge, but the brothers barely did anything there. Only one man, an employee named Bill, worked there. After their parents died, the brothers realized the farm was too big for them. They didn't raise pigs or do anything else, so they decided to sell part of the land. A businessman offered to buy it. Without even assessing the actual value, they sold a huge part of the farm for $5 million. They kept only a small section. Now, these 2 lazy, filthy, uneducated men became millionaires. At first, they didn't know what to do with the money. Eventually, they decided to invest. Near the main house, there was a barn. They turned it into a party hall and gave it a catchy name, Piggy Palace. In 1996, they officially registered an organization called Piggy Palace Good Times Society. On paper, it was a charity for hosting concerts and events to raise funds for social causes. But the truth was far more sinister. The place was shut down in the 2000s. Why? For failing to submit financial records, selling alcohol to minors, illegal gatherings, and other violations. Meanwhile, Robert's brother Dave was charged with sexual assault and traffic violations. But I've jumped ahead. Let's rewind to the early days of the Piggy Palace, when parties had just begun. At that time, women from the poorest parts of Vancouver started disappearing. Most of them were addicts, alcoholics, or estranged from their families. When they vanished, no one looked for them right away. Their families often assumed they'd just wandered off. The police didn't take it seriously. Only after months of silence would someone report them missing. And even then, the police paid no real attention. Now let's mention a few missing women. Rebecca Guno, 23 years old, last seen June 22nd, 1983. Missing after 3 days. Sherry Ray, 43 years old, disappeared January 1984, not reported for 3 years. Helena Auerbach, 33 years old, said she was going to work in March 1986 and vanished. Teresa Ann Williams, 26 years old, last seen July 1988. Officially reported missing in March 1989, but again, no police action. So women kept vanishing. They disappeared without a trace, but no one treated it as a crime. What happened to them? The parties at Piggy Palace became more and more popular. Sometimes over 2,000 people attended. But who were these people? Mostly bikers, drug addicts, criminals, and of course, prostitutes from Vancouver's poorest neighborhoods. Robert often went to the sex worker districts in Vancouver. Why? He had a machine for disposing of meat scraps. He took waste to that area. There, he began inviting women to parties, offering alcohol, drugs, some money, and promises. Most of the women accepted. It seemed like a normal offer. They came to the Piggy Palace, joined the party, and then vanished without a trace. Robert and Dave ran these parties, but they weren't just celebrations. For some women, there was no way out. And Wendy's story, the woman who was stabbed in the stomach and escaped, she ran away from none other than the Piggy Palace. By that time, many women had already gone missing. Still, the police did nothing, so Robert Pickton was released. He went back to his farm as if nothing had happened. But there was another man on the farm. Not just any worker, but a biographer who had been documenting Robert's life. He began to grow suspicious. He knew women were disappearing. He knew Robert often went to those areas. He believed there was a connection. But what could he do? This was his employer. Accusing him could mean losing his job, being threatened. It wasn't easy. Still, the biographer changed his mind. One day he went to the police and said, "I believe Robert Pickton is connected to at least half of the missing women." Another guest at one of the parties told him they had seen dozens of bags, women's clothes, and personal IDs inside Robert's house. The biographer told police about this witness. The police found the witness and tried to talk to them. But they were terrified. They said, "I don't want to get involved." And the police had no legal grounds to search without evidence. At that time, no one understood how horrifying this case truly was, so the investigation was dropped. Like many others, this case went cold. Years passed. In 2002, another person went to the police and said, "I saw illegal firearms in Robert Pickton's house." Now the police had legal grounds. They obtained a warrant and searched his property. At first, they didn't find much. But then, they discovered items belonging to some missing women. Robert was arrested, but released on bail. Police warned him not to return to the farm, and not to leave the area during the investigation. Here's an important detail. Even though they sold most of the farm, they still owned a small part, including the slaughterhouse. They no longer raised pigs, but the slaughterhouse still had meat hooks, bloodstains, old knives, all the tools for butchery. The police searched the slaughterhouse. There, they finally found the blood of one of the missing women. Now there were no more excuses. Robert Pickton was formally charged with murder. He was taken into custody. But the police still didn't understand the full scale. During the investigation, they found hundreds of women's belongings on the farm: bags, photos, clothes, IDs. They finally realized this wasn't a case of random disappearances. This was systematic, ongoing, premeditated slaughter. Robert was placed in a special cell. Another inmate, secretly an undercover officer, was placed there too. The police wanted to hear him confess, and it worked. Robert began talking. He told the officer, "I got caught because of DNA." The officer, pretending to be a fellow criminal, said, "The best way to get rid of a body is to throw it in the sea." Robert laughed. He said, "No, I did better. I used a rendering plant." Then he leaned closer and said in a quiet voice, with hesitation but also pride, "I know I killed a lot of women, but I wanted to kill more. My goal was to reach 50 victims." Robert confessed to killing 49 women, and he wanted to surpass all the most notorious serial killers in the U.S. He also admitted that he injected some women with irritants or poisons. He cooled the syringes in cold water first. They died within 10 to 15 minutes. According to him, the first killings began in 1991, but things escalated in 1996, 1997, after the Piggy Palace parties began. He lured the women with party invites, alcohol, drugs, promises of money. Then he took them to the slaughterhouse. He handcuffed them, injected them, or strangled them. Then butchered them like pigs. Robert kept what he considered the best parts of the bodies. The rest he sent to the rendering plant. What did this plant produce? Animal carcasses were turned into gelatin, used in cosmetics and candy. So yes, the remains of these women entered the industry. People unknowingly consumed human remains. This wasn't just grotesque, it was absolute savagery. Worse, Robert mixed human meat with animal meat to make sausages. He served those at parties. Even more disturbing, he gave sausages to neighbors, shops, and even orphanages. Bones were fed to pigs on another farm. After this came to light, the police conducted another deep search. Even after cleaning everything, only remains of 25 women were found. The rest were gone. But Robert confessed to killing them. Still, he was only officially tried for 6 murders. Due to lack of evidence for the rest, he was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Today, he's still in prison. His siblings, Dave and Linda, were not charged. Authorities say they had no involvement. Though some clues suggest Dave may have known something, no solid evidence was found. If he had been involved, the police would have charged him too. This story is not just horrifying, it's heartbreaking. I don't pity prostitutes who were killed, to be honest, but feeding their flesh to others is pure horror. Anyway, share your thoughts in the comments. Take care of yourselves. See you next time.